Just a little Advent mix-up. All right, our sermon text is from Luke chapter 1, verses 39 through 55. At that time, Mary got ready and hurried to a town in the hill country of Judea, where she entered Zechariah's home and greeted Elizabeth. When Elizabeth heard Mary's greeting, the baby leaped in her womb, and Elizabeth was filled with the Holy Spirit. In a loud voice she exclaimed, "Blessed are you among women, and blessed is the child you will bear. But why am I so favored that the mother of my Lord should come to me? As soon as the sound of your greeting reached my ears, the baby in my womb leaped for joy. Blessed is she who has believed that the Lord would fulfill his promises to her." And Mary said, "My soul glorifies the Lord, and my spirit rejoices in God my Savior, for he has been mindful of the humble state of his servant. From now on, all generations will call me blessed, for the Mighty One has done great things for me. Holy is his name. His mercy extends to those who fear him from generation to generation. He has performed mighty deeds with his arm. He has scattered those who are proud in their inmost thoughts. He has brought down rulers from their thrones, but has lifted up the humble. He has filled the hungry with good things, but has sent the rich away empty. He has helped his servant Israel, remembering to be merciful to Abraham and his descendants forever, just as he promised our ancestors." Mary stayed with Elizabeth for about 3 months and then returned home. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, sounds good. I'm going to have a little bit of setup here. I brought props this week. I just wanted to say, as we are in this fourth Sunday of Advent, focused on love, I was feeling this week just gratitude for this congregation allowing me to be able to preach on occasion. I mean, that's not something that you usually have in a congregation. And for those of you who are visiting, we have a volunteer preaching team, and so we rotate around, and I'm probably the least frequent, maybe once a quarter. And so there's good news and bad news in that. And the good news is if you don't like a preaching style, you can just wait till the next week, right? Okay, and so for our friends on Zoom, I'll give you maybe a little bit of a closer up on our illustration later with my camera. There was a dinner that I went to, I think in 1999. I was in college at K-State, and there were maybe 14 of us or so that traveled over spring break to Washington, D.C. And while we were there, we were hosted for one meal by a Lebanese woman named Muna. And I remember that meal, it was at a Lebanese restaurant, and we went there, and the lights were kind of low, and it had amazing aromas and smells that were just, coming from it, and it was all unfamiliar food to me, but the aromas were so nice. I had these acquaintances and friends that we had done a road trip all the way there, 20 some hours. This new experience, and we're sitting around this table being hosted by this woman who I had just met. I don't think really any of us really knew her. But I just remember that warmth of being hosted by someone else it was a lavish meal. I mean, it was extremely expensive, probably the most expensive meal I'm sure that I'd ever eaten in my life at that time. And I just remember that warmth of that hospitality It was just a beautiful, beautiful experience. As I was thinking about the passage for this week, I wanted us to think about it in terms of a poem or a song or a friend with a meal, something that you would sit with and let it saturate you instead of kind of analyzing and dissecting, like in a laboratory. And so that's really my hope this morning, is that you can hear this passage maybe afresh, and that you can just be maybe warmed by some new thoughts rather than thinking about it from too much of an analytical perspective. I'm going to reread Mary's song from the New Living Translation. Mary responded, "Oh, how my soul praises the Lord, how my spirit rejoices in God my Savior. For he took notice of his lowly servant girl, and from now on all generations will call me blessed. For the Mighty One is holy, and he has done great things for me. He shows mercy from generation to generation to all who fear him. His mighty arm has done tremendous things. He has scattered the proud and haughty ones. He has brought down princes from their thrones and exalted the humble. He has filled the hungry with good things and sent the rich away with empty hands. He has helped his servant Israel and remembered to be merciful. For he made this promise to our ancestors, to Abraham and his children forever." In Mary's song, I was drawn to 4 beautiful moments in it. The first one was Mary's humility. So this passage is filled with majestic imagery and power and blessing and mercy. And she says, "All generations will call me blessed." But I don't detect any kind of haughtiness or arrogance, but a spirit of humility, because the Mighty One has done great things, like even for me. And I just thought that was a beautiful thing, how she could gush with majesty, the majesty of God and his work in her inmost being, and yet she has such a humility about her that we don't get any kind of conceit, even though she's carrying this amazing, amazing gift. The second thing I sat with this week was that those who fear God receive mercy. And it's not just a fleeting mercy, but it says that his mercy is extended from generation to generation. It's a recognition that when we receive mercy, there's a connection between that mercy received and the mercy that's been given before us and the mercies that are coming after us from generation to generation. And I just appreciated that it wasn't like a little blip, but it's this extended, protracted thing that our mercies received, even when they're little mercies, they're connected with all the mercies that God is extending and has extended. Another thing that I found beautiful about this passage was this idea of justice. When God decides in his time and in his way, he brings down the proud and the powerful. But he lifts up the weak. And it says that Mary's song, that he fills the hungry. And he doesn't just fill the hungry with some limp leftovers, right? Some stale bread. But it says that he fills the hungry with something good. And as I was thinking about that, I know that, like, there are times when I feel hungry, right? I'm physically hungry, but there's also times when I feel like, hungry on a deeper level, right? And I invite you this morning to think about, what are you hungry for? Do you have that hunger? There are different layers of that, right? God's promise in Mary's song this morning is that he will fill us. He will fill the hungry with something good. And I think that's a beautiful thing this season that I find a lot of hope in. The fourth thing that I found particularly beautiful in this passage is related to the second one of mercy, but it's mercy promised. Mary recognized that she was part of something so vast that the experience of her moment would be the fulfillment of promises that were extended, that were given to Abraham, and they were extended for hundreds and even thousands of years prior. For all generations after her. She said all generations after her. To Abraham and his descendants forever. She's grounded in a story that's magnificent. And she carried the ultimate child of promise, right? I mean, she had the Christ child with her. But I was wondering, what would it mean for us to see ourselves as part of God's story magnificent that would be fulfilling promises not just for ourselves, but for generations to come. And what I mean by that is that it kind of goes back to that idea of mercy, that we ourselves, could we see ourselves, even in a small way? Christ is the main one, the big one, but we, right, as little Christs, that maybe we are extensions, we ourselves are extensions of mercy. Like we are the fulfillment of promises made to generations before us from people that we didn't know. Think about that each one of us can in some way, big and small, be the fulfillment of promises. And as we fear the Lord and as we trust in him for his provision, that extends that promise for generations to come, right? It just keeps going and going and going. It's such a beautiful thing. There was a man when I was growing up named Virgil, and Virgil was he was an old man when I was a little kid. He was kind of tall. He had, this body of an old man, but he had the heart and probably the mental capacity of a little child, probably a child much like myself. And Virgil lived in a retirement home up the street. Our town was about 500 people, so small rural America, and there was just a lot of trust then, right? And people would see each other a lot more. And Virgil lived in this assisted living home, but he would wander the town every day, and he would knock on our door, and as he did with a lot of other neighbors, and he would ask if he could play a song, and he would pull out his harmonica, and he would stand on your doorstep, and he'd play you a song. It wasn't like the greatest, but he knew several songs, and he would just like go to town on that harmonica. And that was Virgil's gift, where he always carried that harmonica with him. You knew that any moment he was going to pull it out and start playing. I couldn't get past this passage without that idea of carrying. That word just kept coming back to me. The things that are carried, and of course, right? Elizabeth was carrying a promise, right? John the Baptist, who was to prepare and make a way for the Christ child, right? She was carrying that child with her. And in this passage, right, of course, Mary is carrying the Christ child himself, right? And so she's carrying this baby with her. And we don't read a lot in this passage about like what that was like, and it's not just all, right, a painting of Mary as a pregnant woman and everything is peaceful and calm. There's all the humanity of being pregnant, right? I've never experienced that, but I know that for those of you who have, there's layers to that, right? It's not just calm and peaceful, but it's work. It's sacrifice. And this idea of carrying things that are seen led me to 3 ideas. And so I was hoping that I was going to have some like little kids this morning because I was going to invite them up and engage them. But I'm wondering do I have a few youngers who would like to come up for just a moment? Come on up. And I'm going to, can you hear me okay? Back on this mic. I'm going to try to start our video just for a second so that if those of you on Zoom want to see. Okay, I'm not going to hold this very long, but I wanted those on Zoom to be able to see what we have up here is an iron weight. I think it weighs about 50 pounds. And then we have some pine wood that you might be able to see in the picture. It has really tight grain, and we're going to pass this around in the congregation in just a minute. And then in this box here, well, you can just imagine it. In this box here, there's a gold ring. So these are the close-ups of the visuals, all right? All right, so you guys can stand up here. Come on up.
This is our max height.
Okay. You don't have to be that little. All right, so very carefully, I don't want any toes damaged, but like I want you each to maybe just like lift the weight, right? It's heavy, right? Let's not lift it above our heads. Just feel it, right? Hold it tightly. Hold it tightly. Okay. Hold it tightly. No toes damaged. Okay. You got it? Okay. Now set it back up here. All right. What was that weight like? If I were to send that home with you and I were to ask you to carry that around all day, what would that be like?
I probably could have done it. I mean, I've done something like that before.
Okay.
Probably would have dislocated my arm, but who cares?
Yeah. Any other thoughts?
I would have just gone to bed early.
I'd probably get ripped.
And get ripped. Okay, so this piece of iron, right? If you were to carry this all day, you wouldn't forget it, right? It's substantial, right? It's kind of cold right now when I'm feeling it. It's very heavy. It has a weight to it. It's real. Like you wouldn't forget that, right? It's solid. Okay? All right, next, if you all would grab a piece of wood and a piece of sandpaper and maybe just pass one to each section. And then I'll keep the last one up here. Yeah. There. All right, and so this is pine wood. So it's called longleaf heartwood pine. It comes from pine that used to grow more abundantly in the U.S., I think particularly in the South. And if you look at the end grain, you'll see the rings. I counted the one I think that Daniel has, and it has at least 30 rings in a 1 inch span. So it took 30 years just to gain an inch of thickness on the tree. These would grow for hundreds and hundreds of years, and then they don't really harvest this anymore. But this, I enjoy working with this lumber, and I get it from a place that reclaims this longleaf pine. And if you take the sandpaper and if you sand it, you might be able to smell that pine smell. And if you hold that, right, what's the sense about this wood? What's it like?
It feels very solid and like strong, but it's not like heavy.
Right. Okay.
I could probably do some real damage with this.
Okay. If I were to ask you to carry this around for a day, would it be a problem?
No, I'd probably just whittle it.
Okay, there you go. I like that. All right, so I find that this wood is very beautiful. I think about its properties as being light, but aesthetically, I appreciate the beauty of it. I like that it has an aroma that's really pleasing. When I'm cutting it especially, and you can smell it, it just brings me joy. So that's that object. This object, somebody want to open this? So maybe 5 years ago, you can hold it up, or take it out. Maybe 5 years ago, I was. This is actually my wedding ring, and I lost my ring. I really hardly ever take it off, and I lost it. You can hold that and pass it around. So I ended up, after not finding it for a month or so, I bought another ring, which is the one I'm wearing. But that's the original wedding ring. It's valuable, right? It's made of
22 karat?
I don't know 22 karat. It's made of gold, probably 14 karat. But it is, right? It's pricey. Like gold is expensive, right? It's not cheap. But it also has like a value to me, right? Just in terms of the ring and what that means for me. When I see the ring on my finger or I hold it, like it reminds me not of myself, right? It's a symbol that makes me think about all the things that come with that. And I think of Sarah, and it's priceless in the sense beyond the financial value. So if I were to ask any of you to carry this, no problem, right? You could carry it around for the day. What would you think if you're carrying around a gold ring? Like, would you forget where it was? Do you think you could remember where it was? Yeah, okay. All right, you guys can go sit down.
I'd burn it in Mount Silent.
So we'll come back to these in just a moment, but just kind of sit with those ideas for a moment. Sometimes we carry with us things that are seen, right? If you're pregnant at some point, you can see that, right? And others can begin to see that. And you think about Mary and Elizabeth, they were pregnant and they could see that. But we also carry around things that are unseen too, right? Sometimes those things, I've heard from many in the congregation, those things can be like fear or anxiety, right? And you carry that with you, and that's real too, right? It's just as real as the physical, carrying something physical around like a weight or a piece of wood or a ring. But there can also be, I was thinking about this season, maybe some covetousness. It's a hard word to say. Like as you see other people, right? Maybe the gifts that they're given or the life that they're living or the things that aren't happening to them but that are happening to you or vice versa. And there can be a sense of, carrying around a weight, right? Just in terms of wishing that wasn't your situation or wishing that it was your situation. But we can also carry on the flip side joys, right? There's a lot of joy, I think, that can be found in this season. Hopes, a lot of hope. I know for myself, I can feel myself, hopeful for some things to come in the midst of some of the other feelings. And then as we sang about this morning, love, right? Peace. We can carry those things. We can carry those things with us, and they're real, right? So I would like to. My invitation to you this morning is for you to think about the things that you are carrying with you this morning. It could be maybe some of the things that I just mentioned, or something else that that you're carrying, and it could be really, really positive and filled with joy, or it could be sadness, just something sad and something that you're apprehensive about. But what I would like to invite you to do is to think about something else invisible that we are invited to carry, which is Christ in us, Christ with us. And we're called as believers to carry Christ with us. And so you might say, okay, well, what does that have to do with any of these objects? For me, I felt like these were kind of strange things to select, but I don't know how I arrived at these or came to them, but I viewed each of these as a symbol for the way that I could think about Christ in me or Christ with me. And the first one is the substantial thing that this piece of iron is. I was asking the kids if they would forget if they were carrying that around with them. And I think that sometimes, I know for me, I forget that I'm carrying Christ in me, that Christ is with me. And so this object, this last week, made me think about dwelling on this, and that Christ in me or with me is a beautiful weight. It's a heaviness that isn't necessarily a burden, but it's substantial. It's not something that I can forget about. And I liked the idea of thinking about Christ in me as something that wasn't easy to forget, that I could really hold on to and feel, right? Sometimes I know that when I'm experiencing something and I feel maybe distant from the Lord, I just want that presence, that weight of His glory, of His being with me to be present. And then the other object is the wood. I think sometimes it's easy to forget how beautiful it is to have Christ in us. We're reminded many times of the beautiful things of Christ in us, but for me, I thought that was a symbol that helped me think about the light burden He promised that it would be. We have to carry our cross, right? And there's work in it, but there's also a lightness about it, and there's a beauty that we can have. And so I appreciated that object for me, thinking about carrying Christ as something beautiful and that had a pleasing aroma. And then the last thing, a ring. It made me think about just how precious and valuable it is to have Christ with us, to carry something of a value that we can't really put a price on, right? We think about how much things cost, and we manage finances, and we maybe struggle with money, but man, what Christ is with us, it's just an incomprehensible value. And I appreciated that, thinking about that. It was helpful for me to think about the ring as a symbol, that gold as something that I could associate when I'm thinking about Jesus. It just helped me think about him in a different way. And so this morning, as we prepare for communion, we're invited to come. We have, for those of you who are visiting, we have 4 communion tables where you're welcome to share in the bread and in the cup. One here we can serve yourself, one in the back where you can gather with other friends and they'll say the Lord's Prayer, and then I can serve you communion up here, or Sonny will be in the back if you have a special prayer need. And one of the things I'd like to invite you to do, if you want to, is to think about one of these symbols maybe as you're taking in the bread and you're drinking the juice. Like you're carrying, that's a symbol also, right? You're carrying Christ with you. If you would like to, you can come up and touch one of these objects. Don't lift the weight just because I don't want anybody's toes hurt. But if it's helpful for you, whether you're thinking about it as a symbol or you're touching it and it helps you to think about Christ in you in a different way, I invite you to do that. But all has been made ready. Please come and share communion with each other.